Welcome to the Saturday Cadence podcast. I'm Blake Biscardi, and remember, the Saturday Cadence podcast is the heartbeat of college football.
College football has so many great players, but which one of them is going to win the Heisman Trophy? My name is Blake Biscardi, and welcome into Saturday Cadence. I am your host, and we've got a great episode for you today as we discuss my Heisman Trophy contenders, and then also I'm going to reveal my preseason top 10 teams. We're going to dive into those teams and give you a full breakdown and an outlook of how I see them performing this year on the field. So let's get right to it. We're going to start with the Heisman Trophy now. Like I said, there's so many great players in college football this year. The best player is going to be Jeremiah Smith. He's from Ohio State as a wide receiver. The second best player is going to be Caleb Downs, also for Ohio State. So I know the Buckeyes lost 14 draft picks to the NFL, but they do return the two best players in the country, and they've got a lot of depth guys who played rotational snaps last year going to be on the field. So while Ohio State is young in terms of experience, it's not young in terms of roster. But I'm going to start my Heisman Trophy outlook here with the quarterback at Clemson. That's going to be Cade Klubnik. I think Klubnik has been in this system now with Garrett Riley at Clemson for 3 years. And this guy playing in the ACC, it's a weaker conference, but that doesn't take anything away from Cade Klubnik's ability. I think because he's been in college for so many years now, he's one of the more veteran starters that we're going to find across the sport. I actually think Cade Klubnik has a really, really good shot. He's my preseason favorite to win the trophy. I think he could do that. Clemson's schedule is favorable for them. Those big games against LSU right away, playing at home in Death Valley against an SEC opponent. So if Klubnik and Clemson are able to win that game, as long as he doesn't turn the football over multiple times, it's going to give him an inside track right away to be the leader in the clubhouse for the Heisman Trophy. So Cade Klubnik at Clemson, I think, is someone to buy stock in when it comes to the Heisman Trophy. Whether or not Clemson goes and makes the playoff and wins a national championship, I think Klubnik still is going to put up the statistics. They're going to get a couple of big wins as long as they go their direction. And I think he's going to be the one that you want to watch when it comes to this Heisman Trophy. But like I said, they play LSU week 1. That means Garrett Nussmeier just as much is going to have an opportunity to showcase his talents for LSU, as they also have a huge week 1 game. It's the same. They're going to be on opposite sides of the field, on opposite sidelines. And I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to be my number 2 pick for the Heisman Trophy this season. I'm very high on LSU and what they return. Blake Baker gets year 2 with this defense. Brian Kelly has recruited well. They brought in the best transfer class among the contenders. So many new pieces for LSU to fill some holes, but they've got a great wide receiver core, solid running backs. And I think Garrett Nussmeier is going to throw the ball all over the yard for LSU this season. They've got some big matchups against Clemson, like I said, in the non-conference inside track for the winner there. And then they also play Alabama in Tuscaloosa. So let's think about this. If LSU is able to get 1 or 2 wins in either Death Valley, which is Clemson, and then Tuscaloosa for Alabama, that would be monstrous in his Heisman Trophy campaign, not to mention the other big SEC games that LSU is going to play, which we're going to get to later in the show. And I think Garrett Nussmeier is another guy to watch. He's going to have the statistics for it. It's just going to be, can LSU win those big games so the resume looks better for him as it comes to the end of the season, splitting hairs. And who knows, since they play each other head-to-head, Klubnik and Nussmeier, that head-to-head may be the deciding vote for some of those Heisman voters when they're coming in at the end of the season, seeing these two guys sitting there. They say, all right, they won head-to-head. I'm going to give the edge to this guy. So that is why I have them as 1 and 2. I think Clemson wins that game. So that's why Klubnik is going to be number 1 for me. But Nussmeier, a very close second. I think he's going to have a phenomenal season for the Tigers. My third pick here, again, this has become a quarterback award for the last couple of seasons, which is why I said at the beginning of the show, Jeremiah Smith is the best player in the country. But this is why he's number 3 in the Heisman voting, because it's more of that quarterback award. It's not traditionally given to a skill position player, especially at wide receiver. Now, it's been done before, Desmond Howard, and we had Devonta Smith from Alabama. So Jeremiah Smith certainly has the skill set and capability to win this award. He's going to have most likely Julian saying he's the presumed starter for Ohio State, locked in a quarterback battle with Lincoln Kienholz. But I think Jeremiah Smith obviously is going to see some increase in his coverage this season, most likely going to be doubled or bracketed in most games when the defense is able to but that's going to give opportunities for Carnell Tate, Brandon Innes, potentially Mylan Graham, Bryson Rogers, or Max Clare, who's going to be the secret weapon for the Buckeyes this year at the slot tight end, which is why I'm more confident in this Jeremiah Smith pick, because you can't really bracket and dedicate resources to Jeremiah Smith without also accounting for Max Clare because of the threat he is at the tight end spot or in the slot receiver spot where Ohio State's going 4 wide. It's a lot tougher to call or cover those guys. When you're sitting in those situations, you're really going to have to then figure out numbers for your run fits, because then Ohio State can just check right down to a run. If they see Jeremiah Smith's covered and they've got 4 receivers out wide, they can check down to James Peoples. But I do think Jeremiah Smith, he's an absolute alien. He makes great play after great play. We saw that video of him in fall camp making that one-handed diving catch, incomplete coverage. No other explanation but Jeremiah Smith. So it's just JJ doing JJ things. And he is built now standing at 6'3", 6'4", almost up to 225, what we're hearing out of Columbus. Just think about this. He's going from Jeremiah Smith to now almost Calvin Johnson territory when it comes to this. It was thought he would be a comp to Julio Jones. Now we're sitting in this Megatron talk with Calvin Johnson. He's the best wide receiver prospect since those guys. And I think he has as good of a chance as anyone to take home the hardware this year and lift the Heisman Memorial Trophy in December, especially if he performs well in games against Texas, Penn State, and Michigan, not to mention going on the road to Washington and Illinois. So plenty of opportunities for number 4 to flash his brilliance this year for the Buckeyes, no matter who is under center. Then next down that list, again, this is a theme of this rankings here for me with the Heisman Trophy voters. I've got Arch Manning sitting at number 4. And you may think, well, Blake, why is he so far down on the list? And again, nothing against Arch Manning. I think he's going to be a good quarterback this year. I just think Klubnik and Nussmeier are going to have better seasons overall as quarterbacks. And then I think that Jeremiah Smith is just a better overall player. But I think Ohio State's going to win that week 1 matchup and get that head-to-head over Texas. Now, that's not to say they may not meet again and Texas couldn't win the rematch. But again, with your splitting hairs in this voting, I think Jeremiah Smith and Ohio State beating Texas is going to give them an edge in that voting as well when you're comparing these guys to each other, because you're splitting hairs and you're not comparing apples to apples since it's different position groups. But Arch Manning has plenty of opportunities for Texas this year. They open the season in Columbus against the Buckeyes. They're going to play Oklahoma. They've got to play Georgia. There's plenty of opportunities on Texas's schedule for Arch Manning to, again, flash his brilliance, much like Jeremiah Smith. So I think that Arch Manning being the quarterback at Texas with all the weapons that he has, but also Steve Sarkisian in control of that offense. That's why I think he has such an advantage this year, because he's got a great offensive mind. He's got really good running backs. He's going to have a great offensive line. He's got elite receivers. So Arch Manning is also a dual threat. So he's going to be able to add his legs into the mix, which pretty much Cade Klubnik of the other quarterbacks is the one who can have that run threat. But Arch Manning, definitely the most dual threat of those quarterbacks on my list. And he's got to live up to a lot of hype. There's a lot of expectations around Arch Manning. So he has a lot to live up to here as we get into this 2025 season. And the bright lights are going to be on him immediately as Ohio State welcomes Texas to town at high noon on August 30th on Fox's Big Noon Kickoff. So make sure you're tuned into that one to see this battle between Arch Manning and Ohio State's defense led by Matt Patricia and Caleb Downs. I'm going to round out my top 5 here with running back from Notre Dame. That's Jeremiah Love. I wanted to throw 2 players on here that were not quarterbacks because it's so easy to see these Heisman lists in the preseason or even late in the year where it's quarterback. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith, the best wide receiver in the country. I'm going to go Jeremiah Love. Not necessarily saying he's the best running back in the country, although I do believe that, but I think he has the best chance of any running back to win the award. Now, you may sit there and think, well, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen at Penn State, that's the best running back room in the country. And yes, in comparison with Notre Dame's, it slightly edges out Notre Dame's with Jadarian Price and Jeremiah Love, but I think Singleton and Allen are going to split carries more than Love and Price. So Jeremiah Love for Notre Dame, I think, is a guy to watch because, again, they've got games on their schedule early in the year that can give you that inside track to winning this award. You just have to sustain that level of excellence throughout the season. They've got early matchups against Miami, Texas A&M, and on the road against Arkansas. So 2 tough road games for the Irish in the early going. They've got USC in the middle of the season. And it's pretty much smooth sailing there outside of a couple of other maybe tricky matchups, but those are really Notre Dame's schedule. It's pretty much a 3-game season for the Irish. Marcus Freeman's done a great job in South Bend. CJ Carr most likely going to be under center for the Irish. And when you're looking at this defense, they're going to have more of a vertical passing threat and attack this season. So that's going to open up some more running lanes as teams are not able to dedicate as many resources to the box or closer to the line of scrimmage as in years past. This Notre Dame team is going to be able to throw the ball around the yard. I'm not saying this is going to be an air raid attack or anything that's going to match Texas, LSU, Clemson, or Ohio State. But in comparison to Notre Dame teams year over year, I do see this being a time where you're looking at this Notre Dame offense. It's not almost unrecognizable, but it's going to look different. You're going to have a legitimate vertical threat every single down with Notre Dame, Jaden Greathouse, and a couple of other receivers for Notre Dame. I think Jeremiah Love is the player to watch on the Irish, especially because I think they're going to be a contender. I don't see Notre Dame going quietly losing 2 or 3 games. I actually think they go 11-1, make the college football playoff, and contend for a national championship. I'm actually higher on the Irish than mostly everyone else. And then I'll give a couple dark horses here before we move into my preseason top 10. And again, you're probably thinking, well, where's Drew Aller? Again, like I'm saying, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen, I do think they're going to split some carries, but I don't think Aller is going to have the statistics to win the Heisman Trophy unless those transfer receivers really bode well for him and they're able to stretch the field vertically, because that's what Penn State's not been able to do in recent years, especially in those matchup games against Ohio State. They struggled to stretch the field. It was only Tyler Warren. He's not there anymore. And then against Notre Dame in the national semifinal, they didn't even complete a forward pass to a wide receiver. It was to 5 other players, 3 tight ends, and 2 running backs. Just think about that. In a national semifinal of the college football playoff as a top 4 team, you did not complete a forward pass to a wide receiver. Unbelievable. I don't think that's the case this year, but again, Drew Aller's best argument and chance to win the Heisman Trophy is Penn State being undefeated and him getting the best player on the best team argument, even though I think Singleton is the best player on offense on Penn State. And that's no slight to Drew Aller. He's a great quarterback, very talented, translates well to the NFL. I know the NFL scouts love him, but I do think Singleton is the best player on that offense. And then you look at guys like Lenora Stellers, the quarterback of South Carolina, Sam Levitt, DJ Lagway, Carson Beck. He could resurrect his career at Miami if they decide to have a great year. Their schedule's favorable, so they certainly can do that. And then potentially Julian Sayin, just because, again, all the weapons we mentioned around for Ohio State, Julian Sayin, the quarterback at Ohio State, should always be in this race. Whether or not they win it should be in the race, and it warrants mentioning. But now I want to move into my preseason top 10, and I'm actually going to start with Miami. They check in at number 10 for me. As we were talking about Carson Beck, I think he's a big reason why. But Mario Cristobal has quietly built a program down there where Brett Ciancia said this on the show the other day, which is a great point about he didn't really inherit the keys to a Ferrari when Cristobal came in there. Miami hasn't won anything in 20 years. So it's not like this plug and play like when Brian Kelly took over at LSU or Marcus Freeman at Notre Dame or anything like that. He's had to build and recruit, and they brought in great transfers. And now they have Carson Beck leading the charge at quarterback, who was picked to win the Heisman Trophy last season. He was the preseason favorite. He did well at Georgia until he got hurt. But I think that he can elevate them in a weaker ACC to make the college football playoff this year. I've got them in the college football playoff hosting a game against LSU. But more on the bracket later on in the month of August as I reveal my conference championship predictions and college football playoff bracket. Speaking of LSU, they check in at number 9. I told you we would have more on the Tigers as we got later into the show. They're going to be my number 9 team. I got them at 9-3 this year. They go to Clemson. They host Florida, South Carolina, at Texas A&M. Then they have to have road games against Alabama and Oklahoma late in the season. Very tricky on LSU's schedule, but I do think they're talented enough. I think the defense is going to be vastly improved in year 2 under Blake Baker. He's the most expensive defensive coordinator in the country, and he will be worth it this year for the Tigers as it engineers them into a playoff berth as an at-large team. So LSU is going to be in the playoff, and this is the thing. If Brian Kelly can figure out how to win a week 1 game, LSU has not been able to do that in the last couple of seasons. We see them in these kickoff classics. They were 0-2 against Florida State. Just cannot seem to get it done in week 1. If they're able to do that against Clemson, that is going to be humongous for their playoff chances. It almost guarantees them a spot if they can get through the SEC with 2, maybe 3 losses. So that game against Clemson looms large in week 1, especially for its playoff chances. Number 8 team in the country is going to be the Oregon Ducks. Now, they lost a ton of production, and they're going to have Dante Moore under center. Dylan Gabriel goes to the NFL along with a bunch of others. They've got a lot of new faces, new transfers. That whole entire offensive line is pretty much patchwork, but not to say it's not going to be good. Just how do these transfers come together? So Dante Moore is going to be under center for the Ducks. Dan Lanning has built a recruiting machine. Oregon probably is going to be a year away this year. I think they're going to be a contender late in the season this year. So if they're able to survive with 1 or 2 losses and get into the college football playoff, I think it's going to be a very dangerous team. I do have them at 10-2 making the college football playoff, but that's going to be the caveat for Oregon because the schedule is favorable. They're just going to have to watch which games they lose in order to make the playoff as an at-large team. They've got Oregon State early, to Penn State for the whiteout. That's going to be the toughest game on Oregon's schedule. Then they have a game against Indiana, who I think is going to take a step back. At Iowa, playing in Kinnick is never easy, so that's going to be one of those tricky potential trap game vibes for them. And then at Washington. So Washington getting home games against Ohio State and Oregon this year. Do they win one of them to throw a monkey wrench in the Big Ten race? But I do think that Oregon is going to be a 10-win team against this schedule. Dante Moore, it's going to give him some time. A real test is at the end of September when they go to Happy Valley for that whiteout game. But Oregon's going to check in at number 8. My number 7 team is going to be the Georgia Bulldogs. I also have them going 10-2 this year. Gunnar Stockton going to be under center, but Zachariah Branch headlines that transfer class from Georgia, which is going to give the offense a serious playmaking boost. They're going to look a lot different as the season progresses because this is an inexperienced roster. But again, so many blue chippers. It's littered with blue chip talent. And just because it's young doesn't mean it's not talented, because it is. They stockpile talent in Athens. That's exactly what Kirby Smart does, but it's going to take this Georgia team a little bit to get rolling. So if it's able to win an early road game against Tennessee, which I think they will, because Tennessee is going to be pretty much regressing this season. I don't want to buy any Tennessee stock this year. I think Josh Heupel has his work cut out for him. Losing Nico Iamaleava late in the cycle is really hurting him as he transferred out to UCLA because of money. That situation really sets back Tennessee because they could have been a contender had he stayed. But then they have Alabama at home. I think that game being at home is a humongous opportunity for Georgia to right their wrongs from last year. But again, at Auburn, the game against Florida and Texas, Georgia Tech. That's where it's going to be tricky for Georgia because DJ Lagway had a great game against Georgia last year until he went out of the game. And then Texas against Arch Manning and Georgia Tech, another team I'm very high on. That's a Friday night game. We saw how that game went last year. Georgia Tech should have won it. They blew the lead multiple times late in the game, could not get it done in overtime to close the deal. So just be on guard with Georgia. I think this is an extremely talented team. This team could win the national championship, but there are some tricky spots on that roster, or on that schedule rather, that you want to make sure that you're noting and keeping an eye on. Again, staying in the SEC here, we're going to have Alabama checking in at number 6. This team has got to go to Doak Campbell Stadium to open against a hungry Florida State team in week 1. They've got Wisconsin on the road. So again, playing a lot of Power 5 or Power 4 teams now. They're going to have 10 of them on the schedule this season. Florida State and Wisconsin in the non-conference schedule. And then at Georgia, home against Tennessee, at South Carolina, need to avenge that from a season ago. LSU, Oklahoma, and at Auburn. So some big games on the schedule for Kalen DeBoer, who brings in Ryan Grubb as offensive coordinator. That is the dynamic duo that got Michael Penix to the heights that it did. And Washington, as it played for a national title just a couple of seasons ago, they are reunited, which means I expect Alabama's offense to take a major step forward this year. Likely Ty Simpson going to be the quarterback under center for the Tide. So I like Alabama this year a lot. I'm going to give a little bit of a lean here. They are most likely going to be playing in Atlanta to me. I've got them against Texas in the SEC championship game. So I think that game against Georgia is going to mean a lot, which might lean my pick there a little bit if you're reading into it. So lots of talk about Ryan Williams as the young receiver for Alabama. He's not going to be the most important Ryan this year in Tuscaloosa. I think that's going to be Ryan Grubb, the offensive coordinator. I also expect Alabama, just one more quick note, to take a step forward with the defense. I think it's going to be a really good defense by the end of the season. But again, like Georgia, it's going to need to make strides as the season progresses. So make sure we're keeping an eye on Kalen DeBoer's Alabama team because they could also contend for a national title. I told you when I was talking about Jeremiah Love and the Heisman that I was high on Notre Dame, and here they are. They check in at number 5, the 5th-ranked team in the country. Marcus Freeman has done an absolutely outstanding job with this group. I've got Notre Dame as one of my favorite teams entering the 2025 season because of what Marcus Freeman's done to elevate the program. They recruit well. You like Notre Dame now perceptionally. And the Irish return an elite defense and a world-class offensive line, plus a pair of workhorse dynamic running backs in Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. CJ Carr is the presumed starter, which means, like I was telling you earlier, we're going to have a vertical passing attack. So this is going to be a new look team, but Notre Dame has to survive the early goings of its schedule against Miami and Texas A&M and Arkansas early on. And then they play USC in the middle of the season there, which could become a tricky game if the Trojans get it going, because I think Lincoln Riley's seat's going to start to get a little bit warmer if they cannot get anything done in these big matchups. They've got to get a signature win. So they're going to have an opportunity against Notre Dame. So if the Irish can survive all of that with one loss or fewer, that is going to put them on the inside track to the college football playoff, potentially even a bye week if they can be at 11-1 or 12-0 entering December. Clemson is my 4th-ranked team in the country. I have them going 11-1 this season. They've got that big game, like I told you, against LSU week 1 at Georgia Tech. Very tricky, has implications for Charlotte written all over it. Georgia Tech is a team that can easily go play for a conference championship game in Charlotte this season. That out-of-conference game against Georgia could be something where, if they're on the outside looking in of that play bid to go to Charlotte, if they could beat Georgia, potentially punching their ticket to an at-large berth in the college football playoff. I think that is literally on the table this season for Georgia Tech. Brett Key's done an outstanding job down there, and I think that is something you want to watch. Keep an eye on. If there's a team that's going to come from, quote-unquote, off the radar, because not everyone's as high on Georgia Tech, it is the Yellow Jackets. I think they can make a lot of noise this season. So they've got to make sure that they're being careful in that matchup. Clemson, that is not a trap game. That is a red alert game. You're going in there. You've got to make sure you're on your best A game. SMU and South Carolina, the only other tricky games on that schedule. So again, like I said, if Clemson can split LSU and Georgia Tech, I think it's in good shape. I do think they drop a game somewhere. So they're the most veteran team in the country. They return a ton of production. I told you Cade Klubnik is my Heisman front runner, but Dabo Swinney made a splash hire on defense. He brought in Tom Allen, the defensive coordinator from Penn State, which the defense brings back 8 starters. So this is their chance. Can we see if Dabo Swinney can get this team back to the pinnacle of the sport? Can his philosophy on the transfer portal, on NIL, on team culture, on doing it the Clemson way pay off? This is where we're going to see it. I just don't think they have the horses to win a title. I think they can contend for it, but I don't see them getting past the national semifinal, because can they win 3 or 4 games in a row, matchup style, talent equated, or where they don't have as much talent? If they were to draw a team like Ohio State, Texas, or Alabama, Georgia, that's the caliber team. Can you go and beat multiple of that caliber team in a row to win a national title? I just don't think that they can do it. But I do love what Clemson has. Maybe they get a draw similar to Penn State, where it's an easier path to a semifinal. Then, in which case, the fatigue factor won't get in there. They could stay healthy. Injuries could happen. We don't know. Clemson's going to be a dangerous team. They're going to be very talented. They check in at number 4. And like I just mentioned, Penn State, they're going to check in at number 3. I've seen them around the country be the number 1 team coming into the season. I've seen them be number 2. Penn State, they're one of the best teams in the country this season. They're a veteran team. They're senior laden. Everybody came back, really, beside Abdul Carter, and he should have won. He was a very high draft pick. Drew Aller's back, Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen. They're probably going to win the Joe Moore Award with their offensive line. It's probably the best in the country. If not, it's right in that top mix. And then on defense, it's going to be a world-class defense. They brought in Jim Knowles from Ohio State, arguably the top defensive coordinator in the country. So Knowles coming back to Columbus on November 1st is going to be cinema, must-see TV. So make sure you have that one circled on your calendars. But Penn State has an opportunity this year. Its schedule, it sets up this way. Oregon at home, that's the whiteout. They've got to go to Iowa, to Ohio State, and Indiana. That's serviceable as a schedule to get to the college football playoff and Indianapolis to play for a Big Ten title. All they have to do is split Oregon and Ohio State, and they're in Indianapolis. It's that simple. They get that win against Oregon. They have the mulligan against the Buckeyes. They're likely going to get 2 shots at them. They only got to beat them once. But that's the thing for Penn State this year. What's the mark of a successful season? Is it beating Ohio State? Is it winning the Big Ten? Or is it truly national championship or bust? How does Penn State temper these expectations? How do they handle these expectations? We've not thrown around Penn State and national championship as a legitimate contender in a very long time. And this year, they almost are putting that expectation on themselves. If not now, when? This is the chance. This is the window for Penn State. Everything is running on 2025 for the Nittany Lions and James Franklin. Can he win a big game? Can he do it without beating Ohio State? Would it still count? The program has to get over the Ohio State problem, and I think it's going to have to in order to win a national title, whether it's on November 1st in Columbus, a rematch in Indianapolis for the Big Ten championship game, or a draw late in the college football playoff bracket. I do think that if Penn State wants to win a title, they're going to have to beat Ohio State at least once. We know they're guaranteed a matchup, could get as many as 3. So they could get 2 or 3 shots to do it. James Franklin's going to have to in order to win a national championship, in my opinion. Speaking of the Buckeyes, they are going to be my number 2 team heading into the 2025 season, and for good reason. This is a tough schedule for the Buckeyes this year, but it is workable in spots. Julian Sand back under center. He's competing for the starting job with Lincoln Kienholz. Has been in the program for 3 years. That's been a contested battle. Kienholz is the more athletic. He's a bigger size, but Julian Sand has the better arm. He was the 5-star recruit. His tape speaks for himself. Just jumps right off the page at you. But Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, Brandon Ennis, that wide receiver room, best position group in the country. They've got Max Clare as a weapon at tight end and the slot receiver. I know I already talked about this. Great offensive line for the Buckeyes. James Peoples is a dude at running back. He's going to have CJ Donaldson backing him up. So I think Ohio State, again, going to be okay at running back. Obviously, not the same caliber as Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. However, going to be good enough for the Buckeyes this season to achieve all of their goals, which are to beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and win the national championship. And then defensively, it's led by Caleb Downs. Matt Patricia's coming in from the NFL, brings a lot of experience as a head coach and coordinator. So I think this Ohio State defense is going to be really, really good. Edric Houston, we saw that he got banged up on the first day of camp. All the reports are saying that it's nothing serious. He was there on day 2 and 3. He was wearing a knee brace, just walking gingerly, not participating. I do think he's going to be okay based on everything that we're hearing out of Columbus. So that's the big question mark for the Buckeyes this season. Yes, inexperienced, but guys have played rotational snaps. Defensive tackle, which is what Edric Houston plays, that's the weakest depth place for the Buckeyes. So it would be a huge blow to lose Houston for that Texas game. And then what Ohio State would do from there is they've got to go to Washington and Illinois, play Penn State and Michigan. So as long as they're healthy for that, they should be favored in those games. But Ohio State, I think this defense is going to be better than people give credit for. This team has more experience than the paper says. So Ohio State, my number 2 team heading into the season. Ryan Day's big focus needs to be to beat Michigan. He has already said that this team, yes, they're the defending national champions, but they have a different mentality this year. They are the attacking national champions. This team wants to prove something. They know they're not last year's team. They want to prove that they can also go and win a national championship. So a very unique mentality from a defending champion team here in Ohio State. This team is going to have an edge to it and have something to prove. So keep your eye on the Buckeyes. And then my number 1 ranked team, which you're probably all expecting, is Texas. They're led by Arch Manning. They've got a ton of talent across the roster. Again, going to find some inexperience. That's about the story of all the contenders this year, new quarterback or youth. Those are the 2 main storylines. So it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. I think even if Texas drops that game to Ohio State, they're going to lose once in conference. They can get into the playoff at 10-2 or 11-1, and I think they're a national title contender. They're going to be elite on both lines of scrimmage. That defense and secondary is going to be world-class yet again, and Steve Sarkisian in control of an offense, I don't have anything to worry about there. I trust it. I think Arch Manning is going to do well. He is a dual-threat quarterback, so there's going to be plenty of ways to use him. He has a lot of hype to live up to, which I think he's going to live up to. He may not exceed it, but I think he's going to perform well for Texas this year and lead them into a deep deep playoff run. I've got them going to the national championship. Just a little bit of a spoiler alert there. Won't give you my pick. You'll have to tune into another show later in August for that one. But Texas is my number one team in the country heading into the 2025 season. We're going to have more coverage for you guys as we continue this climb into the season. It's almost here. We're inside of a month, just 3 weeks until we're looking at a week 0 game, 4 weeks until week 1 of the college football season, which is the official kickoff, in my opinion. So make sure you're staying tuned to Saturday Cadence on all of our channels, as well as the Silver Bulletin, as we are part of that network, tsilverbulletin.com. You can find our written coverage. Find me on Twitter at Blake Biscardi, at Saturday Cadence, and at tsilverbulletin for all of our comprehensive coverage on Ohio State and college football as we get closer to the season and all throughout. We're going to have plenty for you guys. So I appreciate you tuning in to today's show. We're going to wind this down here. Again, my Heisman votes. So we saw my Heisman shortlist here to start the season, and then also my preseason top 10 in a couple of weeks here. We're going to start previewing these conferences, giving you our conference championship predictions, our college football playoff brackets, all as we move right along through August, get you guys ready for this season. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you next time. God bless.